guys, welcome to another video from Razorops. In the previous video we have seen like how we created EKS cluster from console management. We did take a little bit help of cloud formation to create the dependencies which was required for cluster creating of cluster. For example, role, IAM role, which we needed to create, and then VPC, which was related to networking. Along with the VPC, it created few of the subnets and then some security groups. Now in this tutorial, we will try to connect our this cluster, whichever we have created with our local system through AWS CLI. I assume that you have already configured your AWS CLI. If you haven't, please do that before this tutorial. And the next thing, okay, so I would like you to, I will take you to through few steps which I actually went through, and I faced a little bit issue as well from my previous tutorial, and then we can fix here. So again, I'll be going through this document reference, and it's the same which we used before. I'll share the link of this in the description as well. So once you are there, look for create a kube config file, which is step 2, and I'll just go through the very crisp of it. So to connect your cluster in your local system, copy this command which says AWS EKS and then define your reason, and then it says update kube config, and then you have to provide name of your cluster. So this is the main command, and I am using AWS 2. It's just alias for AWS. It will be AWS for you. Okay, so you don't need to worry. So then I tried to run this command, and it added the config file of cluster into my local config files. Then I checked the current context, and it rightly have current context of my this cluster which we created recently. Then I tried to get like if we can get some services, or we can see how if our cluster is properly linked with our local system or not. Then I said kubectl get services. I assume you also have configured kubectl or installed kubectl on your local machine. So it gave me unable to connect to server this because it's trying to execute AWS. So somewhere in your config file, wherever it has updated the kube config file, it has a command to executable command with AWS. And because my alias is AWS2, so I needed to go to this file and change AWS to AWS2. That being said, then again I tried to run kubectl get services, and then it gave me issues like connection was refused. And then later on I figured out this was something to do with my configuration file internally. And what was that? I was trying to connect with a different reason, and my previous configuration was with one user, but I tried to create this cluster from an IAM user, and I had to configure that user. So later on, that's what I did. I tried to have I mean create the user, not create the user, I needed to configure the user in my local AWS configuration file. And once I did that, I ran command again kubectl get services, and it gave me proper values. Now that being said, here we should, so it means our uh, cluster is properly linked with our local system, so we can access its services and all those resources which we have given permissions to access. Now we'll try to create the node, and we'll go through this process. And before doing that, it also needs an IAM. Okay, so let's go to this. So it has IAM role, which we already created, I already created actually through cloud formation process. It's the same process which we created for IAM role for cluster and then VPC. So you follow the same process here, copy this URL and go to cloud formation, give in the stack and then add the values, keep everything default, it will automatically create your node instance role. Make sure you put the name appropriate and something which is related to your this tutorial, so that it can't be mixed up with your different cluster. So it should be related to the current cluster. So now that is done. So basically then, so role, I have already created this Razorops test role EKS cluster, which I created recently, and then we'll just give a name. Let me say it's Razorops test nodes. Okay, and I'll be picking up the recently created ARM role. Subnet, it has already picked which are linked with my this VPC, and then allow remote access to nodes. That's all right. If I want to have SSH pair key so that I can remotely access the nodes, so I'll just give it, and then I'll say okay, allow remote access from all. I'm not giving any restrictions as of now. So let's go ahead. Then here we need to pick what machine image for the node I need to select. So let's say I'm keeping the default whatever it has picked, and then pick the instance based on your requirement. I'm picking T3 small and this size is fine. Then you have to check the group size, basically how many nodes you want. Let me just give 111 as of now. I don't want more than one. Uh, so that will eventually cause me some costing. So I'll say next, and then it give me a review to check whatever the configuration I have set for this particular node, and then I say create. And so creation is in process. I think it will take some time to become active. Meanwhile, I can say kubectl get nodes. So it started giving me notes as well now, so which is good. So that's all guys, thank you very much. The next video will be covering like how to connect this kubectl, sorry, this cluster with Razorops, so that we can take advantage of Razorops to set up our code deployment or CI/CD pipeline. Thank you.